everybody. Glad to have you back. We have Lee Caraher on the show here. She is a PR guru by trade, but she's written 2 leadership books. And she's got some tips for you today that I think will be very unique, that you'll enjoy. Lee, can you give a little background on yourself for the group here, and then we'll dive in?
Sure. So my name is Lee, and I'm an entrepreneur, CEO, founder of my own agency, public relations and communications agency, which I started 17 years ago, sort of by need, which we can talk about later. And now I'm unemployable because I really like working for myself. And in the process of that, of running an agency that has been through tremendous transformation because how PR has changed so much and communication has changed, have almost failed a couple of times, meaning failed, like failed. And in that process have learned a lot that I share in my 2 books. One is called Millenials in Management, and the second one is called The Boomerang Principle, which is all about how to create lifetime loyalty from your employees, even when they don't work for you.
Wow. Okay. I like them both titles right on, but the Boomerang one's got me intrigued. So
yeah. So I wrote the second one actually out of response to my first one, where I was doing lots and lots of workshops with entrepreneurs. It was part of my EO experience. I'm a member of EO, and that whole gestalt of sharing from your experience. And everywhere I went, people were like, why should I train millennials, man? They're just going to leave. They're just going to leave me and I'm going to be stuck. And I was like, and they're dead to me. They're absolutely dead to me. If they leave me, they're dead to me. And I'm like, no, you can't do that anymore. Because if people are dead to you, you're shrinking your talent pool by every person who walks out the door and every person they talk to. So that's number one. So really, if you think about it, loyalty is not when you pay people. Loyalty, when you work for somebody or you're employing somebody and you pay them, it is not a loyal act to show up. It is actually also not a skill to show up. They should show up. But if they decide to leave, it's not disloyal, because you've been paying them the whole time. It is a transaction, service for pay. It's when it's loyalty is when you don't have to do anything for somebody and you do it anyway because of the relationship, because of your heart, because, that would be a good thing to do. And that's, as entrepreneurs, what we want. We want to have as big a footprint as possible based on everybody who goes through our organizations and doing good things for us. And how do you do that is what I address in my book.
Yeah, but I mean, sometimes you get somebody leaves. We had a client who recently, I think about a year ago, had a millennial who gained some extra skills, got a big bonus for that, and immediately quit. And so it's just kind of like, and the guy was pretty negative before it happened. And so, it's kind of write the guy off, it's like, what do you do?
Well, I mean, I think you could write them off. I mean, if you're rewarding a person who's been negative to your business, that is a problem. You shouldn't be rewarding anybody who's negative to your business with anything. If they are negative and you can't get them on the right path by working with them and yourself bending and them bending, then help them be successful from somewhere else, because everybody is going to be hurt by that negativity, is what I believe. So it is true that not everybody who leaves is Boomerang eligible, but I would tell you that if you can think about how you help people be Boomerang eligible so that they leave not in a blaze of glory, but in a way that you might miss the person but might not miss their work, then everybody wins. Because one, if you bring somebody back later in their career, they're more valuable to do the second time. They learn, they know your culture already. They know how to succeed in your culture. And B, they've learned so many other things. If they come back to you, they're doubling down on the goodness there. Also, if someone leaves you and they're negative, they can hurt you if it's their fault, if it's your fault. And if it's their fault, they're negative, well, you're not going to lose anyway. So I really think that if we shouldn't keep people in our organizations that are bad apples, and we should do everything we can to keep the good apples happy as long as they will be. And then when they leave, help them to succeed in whatever's next, because that's where you're going to get the big network effect of having an alumni base. Here's the deal. You hire somebody and you know they're going to leave you. It is not a mystery. If you're not the entrepreneur, if you're not the owner, everyone's going to leave you. So why not set yourself up for success for everybody who's going to go on to something new, then, worry about them not having your ethic, because they don't. There's us entrepreneurs, and then people who work for us, and they're very different people.
So what about this thing where you're saying somebody has to be Boomerang qualified? What are the attributes of being Boomerang qualified?
Well, one, don't be a jerk when you leave, right? You don't like change the salt. These are all things that have happened, right? Not in my company, but in my cohort's company in my last firm. You change the salt for the sugar. You put a whoopee cushion in the bathroom, the CEO's bathroom. You put Vaseline on, dumb stuff. You shred all the private documents. I mean, all this stupid stuff that seems funny because you want to stick it to the man is just hurting you more than it's hurting the company. Trust me, because everybody's going to remember that. You may have a beef with your boss. People leave people often, right? If they're disappointed. I get that. Oh yeah, I get it. But everybody around you is then also touched by your negativity. And who's going to remember that? Everybody's going to remember that negative thing. And they're not going to remember, he was a pretty good teammate, but man, we had to clean up for an hour after he left. Or I had to reconstruct everything because he shredded all the private documents or whatever, or he took something with him. Those are stupid things. That makes you Boomerang ineligible as far as I'm concerned. And I've had several of those people in my career. I hope you come back. Give me the finger or whatever. I'm like, well, I guess you're not coming back unless you make reparation. Or you can have somebody who leaves because it's just their time to leave. They've been with you for 7, 6, whatever, 3 years, whatever it is. They want to do something else. Your company cannot accommodate their desire, either to be in a different place, to learn something new, whatever it is. So you say, great, I'm so excited for you. How can I help you leave so that it's good? How can I help you succeed? And when you leave, it's give as much notice as possible. I mean, I think the 2-week notice is crap, right? If you're running a good business, 2 weeks is not enough time. Now, salespeople, sometimes you want to walk them out the door, depending on what that is. But do you really have to? But they leave and they've tied up in a bow. They give you an email with everything that's on their plate. They give you a recommendation for all the people who work for them. They say thank you as they exit the door. Well, that's a person you'd want to have back. Why wouldn't you want to have that person back? They're good people.
Oh, yeah.
They helped your business. So if you're not eligible, if you hurt the business or the people as you leave, you are eligible if you're a good performer and you don't, you help the people as you leave. That's basically the line.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. And by the way, this particular client had that guy call back later. And he was he had friends in the business, and he'd gone out and got a reality check.
Mm-hmm.
And he met with the top guy and apologized for 20 or 30 minutes and said he'd do better. And
did he get the job back?
They gave him another chance because they're super nice people. And so far it's working.
Well, when you water your grass and people still don't pay attention and they go out there and go, holy crap, it's all barren, tumbleweeds out here. The reality check sometimes is needed because, there's rose-colored glasses when people look outside sometimes.
Well, that's true.
It's good on him, though, to recognize it and then come back and say, I was freaking wrong. Yeah. That's big. That's big.
Yeah.
For both sides.
And also for the team, it was an opportunity for them to live out their company values in a different way.
Absolutely.
I mean, their company values say certain things about integrity and caring for one another and that type of thing. And so they were able to live it out. And whether it works out long term or not, who knows? But it looks like both sides are working at it and trying to make it work right now. And that's
what a positive thing for the team too, though, right? So he probably had to do his man couples with them too. Everyone got to have a say, right?
Well, a little bit, yeah. With the leadership, yeah, he had friends on the team that were at his peer level, so he wanted to get back with his friends also. So it was just it was a mistake. It was, probably a little immature. We've been there. It's been,
But I wish I hadn't. But that would be a falsehood, that's for sure.
Yeah, but so how do you structure it so you basically set up the Boomerang? I mean, I totally agree with you. Somebody meets with you, even if they're your superstar, top person, which is devastating to lose them.
Devastating. Mhm.
But even if they come to you and they say, hey, I'm sorry, I got tempted by this other opportunity. I've decided to move with this other company. I'm going to be promoted to X. I'm going to be able to do that. What good does it do to say, you scumbag, how dare you leave us? We need you, you know? But instead saying, oh, just like you said, that's great, man. How can I help you make this work? Boom, boom, boom. And as you say, you leave that door open. And one of the things you mentioned early on that you didn't go back to was whoever leaves, and even of course the people who stay, they're constantly talking about your company.
Yeah.
Okay. And you want those seeds to be positive seeds, not salt
Wherever
being sown into the earth, right?
Yeah. Mustard seeds everywhere. And I think, it's always been true, who you know helps you get your job, right? And I don't care about Indeed. I don't care about anything online. People are going to get jobs faster if they know people. And you want as much positivity out there about yourself and about your company as possible, right? So is any job perfect? No, you can love your job and hate some of the aspects of it. Some of the work, I don't particularly like doing my numbers every month, but I love my job, So you can love your job and not like all the work. And in that case, helping when you're in a coaching situation as a leader, helping people understand where is that, I hate this job. Really? Do you hate it? What? And not just like subscribe to the negativity. And particularly for younger people who are just starting their career, it is already a challenge, right? It's already a challenge to start a career, and they all have these expectations that are built on, a lot of grade inflation, frankly, in the college and the high school system. And they get into the real world and they realize, holy crap, there's no 4-year social promotion anymore. And what was A+ work is now really not client ready anymore. What do you mean? I was A+ student. It's not ready for prime time, friend. All these realities hit them at the same time. And so those first 4 years of anybody's career are tough anyway. So how can we help them understand that and help them understand what reality is, number one, so they don't have to look elsewhere for the reality check. And number two, how do you comport yourself? What you should expect for those first few years of a career so that you can have a positive experience, right? Yeah. I actually tell everybody who starts with my company, so my company is 17 years old, I think I said that, and we're in 2 coasts and people all over the place. And everybody who meets, I don't hire everybody, but people all meet with me in the first week. And I tell them all, after I tell them how happy they're here, I say, and I know you're going to leave. I say that in the first conversation I have with people. And what my hope is for you is, and for Double Forte, my company, one, I want Double Forte to always stay on your resume. I want them to stay on your resume for as long as you are in business. If you're 22 today, I want you to keep Double Forte on your resume even when you're 90. Because if you've done that, that means you're proud of being here. And that is how I know that we've done a good job. Number two, I know you're going to want to move on eventually for something. I hope you don't. But everybody does eventually. So, and what I love is that if you find yourself wanting to do something different, and then tell your manager you want to do something different, and we'll see if we can accommodate that difference in the company. But if we can't, then we'll help you do what you want to do. And what that has led to is, one, we've helped some people go back to school to become nurses. We're not a hospital. We can never employ them. We've helped people go on to be content creators. We have, specifically on specific, very high-end fashion. We're not a fashion agency. That's what they wanted to do, but we've helped them get the cred so they can go get that job. We've helped people start their own agencies. They want to be by themselves. They want to live in the mountains, whatever it is. So if people come and tell us, as long as it's a conversation, like, what do you want to do? We'll help you do that. In the confines of our company, some things will work. We're a small company. A lot of things won't. But if you tell us early enough, just honest about it, and you do your job while you're here, we can help you do both. So that when people leave, they've left a great legacy, a great input. They've learned all the way through them figuring out what's next. And then they get launched into the next phase of their lives, of their careers. And then in the 17 years, we've rehired 13 people, and we've rehired 4 people twice. And every time someone comes back, it's a good thing for the people who are here. Like, wow, the grass is really pretty good here. And when we've hired people come back the second time, they've had very different jobs, very different responsibilities, and people have seen how you can, we're a small company, we're independent. There are big, big agencies in this world. I used to run half of one, and we'll never be able to give all those. We can't go to London with us. Sorry, it's not us. But if you have that experience, am I going to want that in my company? Absolutely. Come on back when you're ready to come. I hope there's a job here for you because you would be very welcome here.
So I'm curious, when you've got somebody who's struggling in performance, what have you
Mm,
found with your clients or internally are the, one, two, or three your favorite turnaround stories maybe you've got?
yeah,
What did people do that created that turnaround? Because sometimes whether it's a millennial, somebody else,
doesn't matter.
after they've been with you short time, long time, they become disengaged for whatever
Hmm.
reason. And what have you found can turn that around versus just kicking them out the door?
Yeah, I think the first thing is not to wait, right? A lot of people don't want to tell people that they're not doing a good enough job because, oh, they're young, or, oh, having a bad week, or I don't want to be that person who tells their work. And that's the biggest mistake we can do is actually wait to give the critical feedback. And critical feedback doesn't need to be given in a way, the worst thing you can do is say, why'd you do it that way, right? That's the worst thing you can possibly do, as opposed to what would you do it, how are you going to do this differently next time to have a better outcome. And it really requires us to be, sort of much higher human beings than maybe we want to be, right? Because entrepreneurs can be very mercurial because we're just driven by something different, right? But really, you have to take yourself out of that initial reaction. I would have done it so much better, to say, to help people understand difference. So one, don't wait, because if you let somebody be wrong for any period of time and then you correct them, they're just going to stew on the fact that you let them be wrong for so long, and they're not going to trust you.
Well, the other
And
thing is, isn't it, that if you wait, then you've actually validated the behavior, consciously or
exactly,
subconsciously. You basically said
right?
your behavior you're doing when you take those 1 hour bathroom breaks, that's okay. We're
Yeah,
okay with that. We realize you've got a dietary problem, so we're going to let you do that. But and
right.
then you crack down a month or two later or 6 months later,
And
it's like, wait a minute, what are you talking about?
if you have a dietary problem, well, then you need to have a conversation about your dietary problem and what accommodation you need, and that is a law, right?
Yeah.
That's not the same thing as taking a book into the bathroom and reading a few chapters, which hasn't happened here, but it's definitely happened in other companies I've been at, literally. So the point is, I can't, I did not see that coming. Just saying, didn't see that part of the conversation coming. Oh my gosh. So not to wait, and to be, you don't have to be blunt, but you have to be factual, right? Here's what happened. I mean, in the end, your culture is defined, as a leader, your culture is defined by the worst behavior you allow. So you can have wonderful values and a wonderful purpose, but if you allow people to crap all over each other, that's your fault, right? Because you didn't get in there. Because as a leader, you set the tone for what behavior is allowed, right? So if you don't get in there and correct the behavior pronto, you're just devolving your whole business. So one, I think when you ask the original question, like, what can you do? First, for low performers, you have to get in there and say, this is what low performance looks like. This is what high performance looks like. This is what low performance looks like. Here's what I expect. How do you get from here to here? And you have to map it all out for them. And particularly if they're young, and maybe they came from a different part, they're new to your organization. They have a whole different set of what is real or what is expected. You have to set those expectations early, and you have to reinforce them all the time. Oh, I'm so sorry, Joe. Or maybe you're not sorry, but Joe, you did this report. And we discussed that, and this does not meet our standards. And I'm going to talk to you about why it doesn't meet our standards. And A, B, C, X, Y, Z. And let me give you an example of what does. And let's work on the next one together, right? So that one, you've identified the problem. Two, you've shown people what the difference should be. Three, you've offered to help them do the next one together. And so if the third one they do better be good, right? If it's not good, that's a different thing altogether, right?
Well, yeah, and I do definitely agree with you, because I encourage clients that when they do that, they have a very empathetic conversation, but it's very firm on the boundaries. And as much as
Absolutely.
possible, you use the pronoun we. And you did the same
Absolutely.
thing. How are we going to do this?
Right.
We will do this together the next time. And because you don't want to be pointing the finger, making them defensive, making them feel like,
Right.
it's
When
going
I
to be a
think,
negative. Instead, come alongside.
And also, by using the word I, it really sends the message that I do nothing wrong and we all screw up, right? The most powerful thing a leader can say is, my God, I'm sorry I screwed up. Gosh, I sent you the wrong way. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry I screwed up. And then when you screw up as a leader, it's on you to say, I screwed up. I'm going to do something different. I would love your input on how I can improve. When it's your people, it's the we, right?
Yeah, good point. Good point.
The we, because by saying I to a person, like you said, it says that you never screw up, and we screw up every day, and we have to acknowledge it. The power in acknowledging when we do something wrong or make a mistake is so huge, because what you're showing people is that you can recover from mistake as long as you acknowledge it and you can move forward and improve. But if you don't acknowledge your own mistakes, you're telling everybody, don't do it. It's a scary place. If you screw up, hide it. And then you're all, it's at a detriment.
Yeah. So I'm curious, you wrote a whole book about millennials.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay. So you've had your fill of millennials, maybe.
No, yeah. I love them. I'm a millennial champion.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So that's great. So what is your favorite story about a millennial? Can be a bad story, a good story. I don't know. The one that,
I didn't know what a millennial was before I hired them. So I started my company in 2002 in San Francisco during the last or two downturns ago, right? Yeah. And I decided I had been at a very large international holding company where I had over 750, 800 people, 13 offices, blah, blah, blah. Anywho, started my own company. I'm like, you know what? I want people who know what the hell they're doing. I want people this was Gen X. Those were Gen Xers who were all making us crazy before. I'm a boomer. I'm the last year boomer. And I said, only people who have 10 years of experience are going to work at Double Forte. And it was not that hard. 2002, everyone needed a job. It was easy, right? 2008 happened. And I looked at our business model and I realized, holy crap, one, we lost some business. We had to lay some people off. And if you have either a huge interruption in your financials or a small interruption in your financials, you need to look at your business model, because what got you into that problem is not going to take you out of it, right? So we looked at our business model. I'm like, holy crap, there's a donut hole. There's nobody in this city with 10 years of experience left, because no one got hired in our business between basically 99 and 2005. I was like, oh, we better hire. I always want to bring people at the bottom of eligibility, right? Oh, I guess we better hire young people. And I didn't think anything of it, because in my last company where I had all these, 700 people, whatever, only 30% of them were over 30. So I was known for being great with the under 30 crowd. So we hire the first millennial, didn't know what it was, and her name's Stephanie. And I didn't hire her, somebody else did. And the first day of her work, I came in around 10 o'clock that day at a meeting, and there was a dog in the office. I was like, what's this dog doing here? Right? Oh, that's Stephanie's dog, Czar. I'm like, why is he here? And he said, well, you're going to bring him to the office. I said, did she ask if she could bring the dog to the office? No. Did she tell us she was bringing the dog? No. Okay, is anybody allergic to dogs? We should find this out, right? So, and she had Czar had a red vest on, right? So service dog. Is anybody allergic to dogs? Can we find that out first? So they go find out. No one's allergic. Oh, good. Well, Czar was a service dog. It's a Chihuahua. I was like, and not only did this dog, service dog Chihuahua, she had brought his bed in, a kibble dispenser, and a water filtration thing for the dog. This dog was moving in. So they come back to me and say, no one's allergic to dogs, and it's a service dog, Lee. Because when I saw it didn't have his little vest on, I'm like, oh my God. And by the way, she's leaving at 3:00 today. I'm like, what? I was like outraged. I'm like, what are you talking about? And so I call my friends and who run other agencies. I'm like, this just happened. And they were like, oh my God, Lee, you hired a millennial? What are you thinking? They're the worst. And I remember this reaction to my two friends who I call them, like, they can't be the worst. There's 80 million of them. and what's a millennial, you know? So that, I mean, that totally changed my whole, like, what just happened? I never would have thought to come to a company with a dog, first of all, and then not telling someone I was bringing a dog or asking for permission. This did not occur to me ever, actually, in my life, but this obviously occurred to Stephanie and everybody else, because within 8 weeks, we had 6 service dogs in the office because she was running a side business getting them service dog, giving the little red vests. So that's when I knew it was like not in Kansas anymore. Didn't think of anything of it. We figured it out. We're like, you can't just leave your first day. Actually, you can't leave any day without telling us you're leaving or asking for permission. Because what if you had a meeting, you know? So we figured that out. We get her on the right path. We have lots of dogs now. Until one pooped in my office, and then, oh wait, there's no dogs in the office. And then there was a long period of time until I hired the next set. So in the next set of millennials, company hired 6 millennials within 8 weeks of each other. And within 3 months, they were all gone. And we walked one person and 7 people walked out the door within 3 months of being hired. And I had never had 100% failure in hiring people. I was obviously 750 people, known for hiring good people, keeping them. 6 hires, 100% failure, 3 months. Never happened to me in my career. And I was like, and we're good hirers. We're really good hirers, but we were not good at retaining. We could handle Czar and Stephanie, but we couldn't handle everybody else. And that's when I started really researching and figuring out, okay, it can't be them. It has to be us. We couldn't have hired 6 bad people. That's statistically impossible based on our track record. So what is it about us and them that is causing this friction? And when I researched it and I asked them and I went and talked with all of them about it, I realized that we were doing not the things that they needed to thrive in the office. Like we weren't setting expectations. We just assumed people knew, right? And we weren't giving context. We'd like, just do it because I told you so. Well, those things did not work for that crowd. And we had to learn how to communicate in a very different way in a business setting so that the people who we were counting on for our future would actually want to stay, right? And be able to succeed, because those two things may not necessarily be mutually exclusive.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious, going back to Stephanie with the 3 o'clock departure, how did you deal with that? And how did you get her so she wasn't leaving at 3 o'clock or 2 o'clock or whatever?
She didn't show up Tuesday because she was flying down to San Diego to see her mom. So when she came back on Wednesday, we had a conversation about, here's what the expectations are. Here are the hours of the business. If you're late, and we just want you, if you're not going to make it between these windows, right? You just need to let us know, because we're going to think you're dead, right? And you can set your schedule with your manager, but it has to be approved, because it has to work your flexibility has to work for the team. If it doesn't work for the team, it doesn't work for yourself. So we had that conversation on Wednesday. She's super bright. Oh my gosh, this woman. And she's like, okay, no problem. It didn't work going forward. We didn't apply at all the things we learned, because she was so quick to adjust to us. We didn't really, didn't really understand how much of a different thing it was.
What do you mean, how much of a different thing it was? Not trying to pick on Stephanie, but in general.
To set the expectation. Like, of course, everybody knows to show up by 9.
Yeah.
Of course, everybody knows the end of day is actually 5:30. And what we learned the second time in that big exodus was that the words we use as boomers have so much different meaning to many millennials and now Gen Z. And I'll give you a couple of examples. Like deadlines, I think, are the cause of about 60% of friction in companies. And a lot of the deadlines are in the language. So give it to me at the end of day. Well, to me, end of day, I'm 55, last year boomer, end of day has always been 5:30 or 6 o'clock in my time zone. That's what it always meant. Anybody who went to college, let's see, if they're 30 or 35 or younger, basically, used online submissions for deadlines more than anything else. And 11:59:59 is the predominant deadline for people who graduated from college in the last 10 years and high schoolers. 11:59:59, wherever they are. So I could say, please give it to me on the day. I tell that to somebody in Hawaii. They gave it to me at 11:59 p.m. Hawaii time. Well, they missed my deadline by hours, right? And then they're late, but they're actually right, because it is still the end of the day. And because we work in multiple time zones, if I didn't declare which time zone it was due in, they're right and wrong at the same time. And as the delegator, it's our job to be as specific as possible. So we figured that out. I'm like, what do you mean? It's the end of day, Lee. Yeah, I sent it to you at 11:59. I'm like, that's not the end of day. Well, yeah, it technically is. I'm like, oh my God. I mean, really, I had this moment. I'm like, no, end of day is 5:30. What are you talking about? It's 11:59 p.m. Or if you're in England, 23:59, right? So literally, that was the conversation. Lee, what are you talking about? 11:59. And she was in a different time zone than me. And I'm like, no, end of day. She goes, I don't know what you're talking about. What? And I realized that we were using all these very ambiguous terms to them that were very specific to us, like end of day, later, things like tomorrow. Like, so if you're me, end of day means 5:30. Tomorrow means tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. when I show up. I show up a little earlier than that, but that's what it meant. And then later means before you leave that day. That's what it means. And anybody my age, no problem with those descriptors. Everybody younger, they were right and wrong at the same time. And we have to do as much as we can to drive the clarity. So today, if we give instruction on deadlines, I need it Tuesday, what's tomorrow? October 16th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And we put that in everything for our clients and for our people. And when people join us from other places, they're like, do we need to put all this? I'm like, yes, put it all in. And you will never have anybody be late ever again in your whole life. And then when we started doing that, the conflict dropped dramatically in the company.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. When I run into somebody who struggles with deadlines, basically we teach them or their manager or peers to divide the task into pieces if it's big enough, and then set separate deadlines. So I want this piece by Monday at 5. I want this piece by Tuesday at 3. I want this. And like you say, if you don't give the time, you're going to have a disconnect.
Yeah.
And it's just going to happen. Yeah.
And
so
then we also focus on the fact that if you don't know the deadline, it's your job to ask. So there is, it's not all on the manager. The manager might screw up, right? But if you get something that doesn't have a deadline, the first thing you do is ask, when is this due? Because how are you going to know how to prioritize? Maybe this is on fire and you don't know it, right? So just those kinds of things. Another example is a draft, right? So send me a draft. And the first time someone sent me a Google link as a draft, I was like, what is this, right? I'm like, a draft to me, we're in the writing business. We write all day long. We write all this stuff. And like, draft to me was a piece of paper printed out on my desk where I could get my purple pen and start editing, right? They sent me a Google link, which I had never been on before. And there's this whole subculture of people working in Google Docs I didn't know about. And I click on it, and there are 4 different colors, and there's 7 different people up on top, and they're all commenting on the side. I'm like, this is not a draft. A draft is not live. A draft is finished. It's what you think should go, right? It's not like changing words while I'm in it by somebody else. So we had to have a big conversation about that. So
it was possessed.
Well, but this group so anybody under 30, probably about 30 now, is used to co-creating online and in a very different way than we were co-creating when I was much younger. When we were co-creating, we were on a whiteboard or a chalkboard, and we were like scribbling in pens, and then we would go back to our computer word processors and type in, right? And that's just sort of our thought process. Co-creating today is very different. It's very collaborative. You could have 4 different things. And when it happens today and I'm in there, sometimes I have to go, okay, stop. I'm the only one who can edit right now. And then you guys can edit me later, but stop this because I'm going to rearrange everything. But it's just very different, right? So you just have to, those deadlines and working in collaboration, they look so different today than they did when people my age were coming in and like growing into the workplace until literally 6 or 7 years ago. And if we don't adjust, one, there's so much efficiency we can get out of being specific and working collaboratively on Google Docs. We have to learn new ways, right? At the same time, you have to be really specific about, you have to lay it on that it's done, it's finished. A draft is actually, you have to print it out. And I have people who I've hired who've never printed a piece of paper out for a finished product. Well, we send mail still, right? Because we work in the consumer products business. We actually send things in the mail with stamps on it. They're like, what is this? What is this thing you call a stamp, right? So, it's a different thing. And you just have to, bridging the gap is your job. It's your job. We do not have a future in our businesses if we do not have millennials and Gen Z starting now, Gen Z in our businesses. And do we all want to be like 90 years old, by ourselves, figuring all this stuff out? No. So we have to make adjustments. And they have to make adjustments. And so it's about figuring it all together. My first book, I actually got in trouble with my publisher because I wrote it, the first 3 chapters is like, why are we in this situation? And that was a while ago. So that was 2014 when the narrative around millennials was super negative, right? And I was like, you can't, 80 million employees cannot be all entitled. It's statistically impossible. I was not very popular in my peer group. And I lost my train of thought there, but it's just, we have to make adjustments and they have to make adjustments back, right? You're not going to, I'm sorry. I got in trouble because the second part of my book, which was the how-to part, right? Here's the problem. Here's how you solve it, was written for teams. It was written for the person who is the manager and for the employee, which my publisher just called millennial, but of course, millennials can be managers. And they're like, you can't write it this way, Lee. You could only write it for one audience. And I said, I'm not going to publish this book, unless it can be for both audiences, because that assumes that it's all on the manager and that the employee doesn't need to do anything. And also, because that's the problem with business books, right? We go to we all, as leaders and management, we go to these, we go to conferences and we go to workshops and we come out with a whole different language and our employees are walking around going, what the hell are they talking about? So my first book was both books, but this one was really written to be read as a team so you can choose what's going to work for you, because it's not all going to work. Not everything works for all different types of teams.
Well, you've given us some great points, and I really like a lot of the things you've said, Lee. Where can people get a hold of you and where can they find your books?
The easiest thing to do is go to my website, LeeCaraher.com, LeeCaraher.com. You can find my agency, Double Forte, there. You can find my books. I blog on this stuff all the time. If you want to follow me on Twitter, I'm relatively active there too, at Lee Caraher.
Relatively active? I would think you'd be
I'm pretty active. Yeah. I like Twitter. Although I have to make sure I don't go down the rat hole of politics right now. I use my hashtag judiciously so I don't don't get distracted.
Maybe you could teach Donald Trump how to do that, then maybe, but then he wouldn't be as exciting, wouldn't he? So that's okay. We can't go down that one, right? That's a separate podcast. I can deal with a little less excitement, my friend. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I'm not taking sides here either, but as leaders, I think it's great. Learn how to gain more about millennials and also learn about this boomerang effect, basically creating a culture that I'll use a slightly different term, is magnetic. Mm-hmm. So that, people may go out for a little bit, but maybe they come back, or if they don't come back, they're still, really recommending
Absolutely.
You, which is super important. So Lee, thank you so much for being with us. Really
thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it.